Still, apparently never got fixed.
Bodging the ISS and keep flying it like the Air Force is doing with the B-52 bomber.
Good morning. How's everything up in the sky?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to tomorrow. Sorry for the awkward pause there or the intro restarting. It's going to be an interesting show today because we have quite a few things to discuss. I am joined today by Ryan Caton, Jared Head, and the one and only Jami Higginbotham.
We're like 10 seconds into the show and we already have technical
and already
issues.
tripping. If you've been around for a while, you know that this is part of the course for how we do things.
Par for the 100%. As soon as I show back up, off the rails immediately.
Yep. And if
you all are
brand
lucky
new,
that everything even worked. Yes,
Yeah.
if you're if you're watching for the first
new,
time, welcome.
Welcome to the hot mess. So,
Speaking of hot messes, wait,
oh
right
my
there.
goodness.
Oh my gosh.
Another hot mess. We've had a leak for a while now at the International
Again?
Space Station.
Again?
Still, apparently never got fixed.
Oh my God. Wait, hang on. So is this in the Russian? If you said they never got it fixed, forgive me. I've been very heads down at work. And so I've passively seen some of this stuff because certain missions are moving because of it. But like, is this still in the Russian segment where there was like a hole drilled or something? Is it that one?
It's not the one where there was a hole drilled. That was one.
That was a different leak.
That was a leak a couple of years ago. I believe it was a Progress vehicle, right? Or was it a Soyuz vehicle? In any case, it was the orbital module, the round part at the front of the Soyuz capsule. That's where they found that drill hole. This is a different hole that they have seen in the Zvezda module. Actually,
is that the module that had its thrusters turn on and started flipping the station over?
And no, that was the Nauka module. That was the new module that the new old module that finally got docked within the past couple of years.
Turned its thrusters on or emptied its propellant tanks. If you rearrange words around any way you want to, you can make it sound like anything. Okay.
Unscheduled emptying of the tanks.
Yeah.
Sure.
Still,
oh my God.
Technically a leak still, I guess.
So this, hang on. So you're saying that this other issue has been leaking for how long?
Apparently, this has been leaking for a couple of years, and it's this aft docking port on the Zvezda module where Progress and Soyuz vehicles usually will dock there first, especially if they're going to do a reboost maneuver, and then they'll go to one of the other ports. But this little ring, this area in between the main cabin of Zvezda and the docking port where Soyuz or Progress vehicles arrive, this is where they're detecting that leak from. And as long as they have this little hatch door closed right there, it's fine. And they've also noticed that if it's at a certain pressure, it looks like everything is fine, but they're still losing air pressure. So there's still a leak somewhere, and they haven't quite been able to figure it out. So their solution so far has just been shut that door and leave it closed if we don't need it. Only open it whenever we have a crew arriving or when we're taking stuff in and out of a Soyuz vehicle, if we're doing like trash loading or something like that. So yeah, from what I can tell, they have known about this leak as far back as 2020 at least, if not 2019. And it's just been this kind of slow thing that hasn't been a huge priority.
So apparently when we went full screen, I didn't realize that we had broken your... No, it says dynamic grid is in there. Are you guys saying in the chat room that when we go full screen, we lose audio? Because the dynamic grid is in that scene.
You had
so
the
I don't
same
understand.
issue last week. The exact same thing happened last week.
I don't understand why this keeps happening.
I'll work.
Sorry, guys.
Welcome to the chaos. I'll fix that. But keep going. So wait. hang on.
To backtrack to explain to you guys what that illustration was all about. I don't know if you saw my mouse cursor moving around, but the aft docking port at the back is where they're detecting the leak. The little tunnel hallway in between the main compartment and that docking port, where a Soyuz or Progress vehicle is docked, it's in that little transfer tunnel there that they're detecting this leak. So as long as they have one of the hatches closed, they're not detecting that. Or if they have a certain amount of pressure, then they aren't detecting a leak in that tunnel, but are still detecting a loss of overall air pressure. So there's still a leak somewhere and they haven't been able to track it down completely. So it seems like so far the solution has just been to keep that hatch closed, and they're still trying to figure out how to detect and see where, if they could even access that leak. That's the worst one so far.
Yeah.
So
all right,
The
really
best
quick in the
part-
chat room, we're going to do a technical test. I just want to know, can you still hear us?
testing 1 2 3.
All right. I know, doing tech checks in the middle of a show. All right, cool.
So yeah, let us know if you heard any audio just a second ago.
Sorry, Ryan, I interrupted you, and now we're all out of order. Hang on. But yeah, I interrupted you, Ryan. What were you going to say?
I was going to say the best part is that the leaks might be fed by another leak, which might not make much sense, but let me explain it. So we have the initial leak, which is out of Zvezda. So they shut off the hatch, and the pressure seems to be stable, right? Because they've sealed off that leak. But now, after following a well-timed article by Eric Berger, NASA released another statement essentially saying that they have stabilized the atmosphere inside the International Space Station, but they're not sure if they fixed the leak, because even though the pressure readings inside of the Zvezda module are remaining stable, the pressure readings elsewhere in the station are not remaining stable, which could be indicating that the leak in Zvezda is still leaking because the seals between Zvezda and the rest of the space station aren't sealing properly. So space station atmosphere is leaking through the closed hatch into Zvezda, which is then leaking out into space. So that's why we can now say that the space station is leaking again, because the leak is being powered by a leak out of the space station.
Massimo in the chat room says the real problem is not the leak per se, but the fact that the structure is cracked. This means the aluminium structure. I'm sorry, Ryan. Aluminium structure is fatigued and failing. That sounds more bad. Is that correct? Like, is this like that? This sounds not great.
Yeah. From a different study that I had seen a while ago, they are not only starting to see little microfracture cracks all over the station, but they're also seeing cold welding happening. Like the docking port between Zarya, the first Russian module, and the first US connection module, Unity, that docking port is now sealed. We could not undo that docking port right now, even if we tried, which I don't think it was designed to ever unseal for those type of ports anyway. But even if we wanted to force it, it would be, it would be a massive, we would have to be taking apart the station and already depressurized it if we ever wanted to separate those two modules again.
This is interesting. Does this create like a longer term issue for space stations that we're going to have like around the moon or Mars, where it's going to be much hard? Like we're going to want those things up there for a hot minute, right? They're going to be very difficult to service. Do we have a materials problem that maybe we need to choose a different material or figure out something? Do we need to find unobtainium? Like what happened? Like ISS is a test bed for these things, right? It's been up there for a hot minute. But like, what's the future of these other space stations look like if we're having these types of issues here around Earth?
I think it's important to note, though, these modules are not 25 years old. They're 30 years old. In some cases, there's going to be materials dating back over 40 years old, because the original bits of the US modules were for Space Station Freedom. Zvezda was built for Mir 2, which was the successor to Mir that was never constructed, and instead modules and hardware was repurposed for the International Space Station. So these materials not only have they been fatiguing in space for 25 years, but they've also been fatiguing on the ground for maybe up to a decade before they actually launched. So that might also be one of those things to consider going into the future. Fingers crossed these commercial, fingers crossed Haven 1 from Vast won't be, lying around on the ground until 2035 before they actually launch it into space. Same with the Axiom modules, right? So maybe that's one of those things. Once you build your module, maybe you need to have a little bit of a lifespan before you actually launch it, because you'll be fatiguing that module on the ground, which is then obviously, as we have seen, going to be taking strength out of that material as it then goes on to serve in space.
Huh. I wonder if we're going to be able to come up with mitigation plans or anything. I mean, it sounds like the material is fatiguing, so I'm not sure how you mitigate that. Like, I'm just imagining astronauts with like a soapy spray bottle, just spraying it around seals, trying to find the leaks, right?
Yeah. Answers.
Well, I believe they actually had used tea leaves. They let tea leaves go in the module and then essentially tracked them over a bit of a period of time, and they were able to find where they were sticking to the walls and went, oh, look at that, cracks. So
that's a good idea, actually, right? Like you should be able to find. It's kind of the opposite of a submarine, right?
Yeah, and I mean, literally reading the tea leaves. So right. So what a great way to do it.
I want that to be the procedure name, reading the tea leaves, step 1.01.
People will think it's a joke at first, but no, this is a real procedure that we're doing.
Step 1.01, find the container that says Earl Grey.
And at least that's a way to identify the cracks. But as for a way to fix the cracks, I mean, unless we want to keep it up there forever and you start welding new patches over those cracks, or have a whole new structure that would go around it. Otherwise, looking like you suggested, Jamie, looking at other materials, looking at, some people are looking at stainless steel, others are looking at those inflatable structures. And aside
stainless
from
steel's so hot right now.
I know. Aside from the docking ports, as far as I know, the Bigelow module is still doing great. So those inflatable modules using the TransHab technology, those are so far looking really, really good. I mean, even the ones that were launched in the early, mid to late 2000s, the mid-aughts, the Genesis demos from Bigelow Aerospace, they launched 2 of those, and they're still both fully pressurized. Even though Bigelow has kind of folded, there's still a lot of that data that is transmitted from those 2 demonstrations, which unfortunately don't have any hatches or any way for anyone to go and utilize them somehow. They're really small anyway. They still are fully pressurized, haven't had any sort of problems with punctures or getting hit with pieces, and they have been hit with at least a few small pieces. It's inevitable. So that might be the way forward, even though a lot of folks are still kind of on the fence and scared of the inflatable ones. So far, it's looking like they might be holding up a little bit better than at least the aluminum space station modules.
Are people afraid of the inflatable ones, or was it just like we didn't know and so we were doing testing? I didn't ever get the impression people were afraid of them.
That was the vibe that I was getting, was that people just thought that they weren't going to be safe, even though, not even a centimeter thickness of aluminum is safe. I don't know. I'd be much more comfortable with a couple of layers of air and water.
There are a couple of really great comments. Seb says, nothing is more durable than a temporary solution, say many technicians and engineers. I cannot tell you how many temporary permanent solutions I have in place right now. Oh, I'll go back and fix that later. 10 years later. 100%. I am super guilty of that. Ika says, aluminum has bad fatigue properties. I mean, that seems about on right. And this is the one that I wanted to say for last, because it's a bit of a hot take, and I'm curious to know what everyone thinks. The fix is Earth atmosphere. The ISS is well past its shelf life, and it's got to go. So it's like I mean, in fairness, the ISS was already supposed to be deorbited, correct? Like we're already
Yes.
into one of its extensions, and we're in another extension right now. It's kind of NASA and their waivers.
Just sign a waiver and the leak will go away. Everything will be fine.
right? But like, it was already supposed to be deorbited. We're talking about deorbiting now in what, 2030? There was talks of pulling that to the left a little bit, although I don't know how realistic that is because you still need a deorbit.
If Elon gets his way,
mechanism.
it'll be deorbited in 2 years. So
I was going to
Yeah.
say that was a bit more Twitter diplomacy than anything of actual substance.
Sure, but I don't think that was just Elon talking about that, was it? I feel like there are a couple other people who are saying, and maybe that's just me not understanding, but I thought there were a few other people in politics that were like, yeah, we should deorbit this and work on other things. But that brings up the question, let's just say we did deorbit it. Well, Massimo says, as far as I know, Russia's committed to funding it till 2028. I don't know if that matters, right? Like
That is true.
We'll just keep going, right? Like I don't think that.
Yeah.
But and Raj brings up exactly the point I was going to make is, would they deorbit it before a new space station is built? Or more specifically, before VAST or Axiom are able to get their own systems running independently?
Oh, absolutely.
And should they, right? You think they would?
Oh yeah, yeah. We stopped shuttle flying before Crew Dragon and Starliner were operating. I mean, well, Starliner still isn't operating. But without
example.
we didn't have a spacecraft ready to go at the end of the shuttle program. Shuttle ended, and that was it. We said, okay, hey Russia, do you mind giving us rides to the party for the next couple of years? And that couple of years almost turned into a decade. So
But that happened twice,
kinda what
right?
happened.
So that happened between Apollo and Space Shuttle, and then
Yes.
there was a huge brain drain and there was a huge problem. And it's like, oh well, we learned a lesson, and then we canceled the Space Shuttle. It happened again between the Space Shuttle and commercial space, and they're like, oh, we've really learned our lesson this time. So I guess my question is, do you think that they have actually learned their lesson, or
No.
do you think that no? Not even
No.
really, like you are adamant that
No.
no lesson has been learned twice. No lesson has been learned.
No, people who
That was a
people
different
who
group of people. They got to relearn the lesson.
No.
Yeah, no. That sacred knowledge is not passed down from one Congress critter to another. So
Well, hang on. Nick is bringing up a really good point in the chat room. And for better or worse, U.S. funding of these things seems to be pushed by, we'll call it national pride and competitiveness. And so, when it was, a lot of this was done in the Cold War. But now we've got, it's not really a new Cold War, but it's definitely a race against China. China's targeting the moon. Their space program is ramping up something serious. So do you think that we would even let it be to a point where we don't have a continuous presence in space? Do you think the United States will allow that to happen at all? We went from ISS leaking to, will the U.S. have continued presence in space? That's
That's how serious this is, folks.
yeah, I don't think that should happen, but we've got to consider the budget proposals which have been released by the White House over the last couple of months. The NASA budget isn't trending in a direction where the White House wants to sustain low Earth orbit human presence. They're pushing all of their funds into Moon and Mars and beyond that kind of area, while slashing everything else that supports all of the other NASA programs pretty much. So yeah, it seems if that budget proposal, or even something to the degree of that budget proposal, actually gets finalized by Congress and gets pushed through, enacted, then it's definitely, a shift in direction towards a path which sees low Earth orbit becoming forgotten by, the US's federal space agency.
You do bring up a good point with regards to the White House's proposed budget, but you also bring up another good point, which is the White House does not have the power to actually enact their proposed budget, right? Only the Senate can do that. No.
There's a couple of procedural ways that the executive branch can ramrod a budget through if they want to. Now, in doing that, they step over and into an area of procedure that that would be murky and unknown and untested. But if the past 5 months have taught us anything, the 20-sided dice may indeed be rolled at some point. So we'll have to see. But there are absolutely ways that an executive branch can procedurally decide to basically say, Congress, we're going to go ahead and skip you. We're going to enact this budget that we have. But it ain't easy. But that doesn't mean that the audacity wouldn't be there to pull it off.
Yeah, I agree the audacity might be there, but I think that the administration is getting challenged on a lot of these executive orders and the legality of what they're doing. So I don't know how much appetite they have for doing that to NASA as well. I don't know if they see that as the big, huge win that they think it might be.
And
that's true.
Something that I've noticed with the back and forth between the budgets so far, I mean, we've already gotten one counter proposal to the White House's proposal. And in that, there was still quite a good amount of money for the International Space Station. But in both proposals, not a whole lot of money for its replacement. So far, with the contracts that have already been awarded and ones that are expected to be awarded, we're not even close to 1/8 of the cost that NASA has invested into, say, the commercial cargo program, not even to mention the commercial crew program. So it's still very much a beginning program. And if NASA is serious about having one of these commercial companies take over for them, there just isn't enough funds that have been allocated. That being said, the people behind those companies seem to have enough capital to get things going, at least in the case of VAST and Axiom. And we'll see about Voyager Space and Starlab. They seem to be transitioning more towards defense. But regardless of whether or not they receive a NASA contract, they still plan to move forward with it and have unfunded Space Act agreements to get that transfer of knowledge and get a little bit of operational experience, which is what this whole mission is about with Axiom 4, is getting that a little bit more operational experience, even though it's not their vehicle, not their space station, still having, real experience doing operations, which is what, VAST is hoping to do too, competing for any sort of private astronaut missions that might happen. So getting that experience and being able to do it with NASA's help would certainly speed up the program. If they don't get NASA's help, I think that they still might do it. It'll just be on a much slower timetable. And finally, I did want to say, too, that although it might stink for the United States for us to be so far behind that we're getting offered rides and even experimental space on the Chinese Tiangong space station, I would actually be all for it. Let's repeal the Wolf Amendment. That's the piece of legalese that prevents us with working with China in space. Let's get rid of that and all of us do all the space things together. That would be amazing. So yeah, that's my soapbox.
That might be an interesting show because I might debate you on that one with regards to the human rights violations and I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know. I think that's a show in and of itself.
Well, do you want to go off on that for a minute? Convince me why we should leave it the same and not work with China.
I don't think I have my thoughts organized quite well enough on that one just yet to be fully compelling. But I think there is the short version of it is, they have a mentality of landing rockets on people. Right? They don't care. They just land rockets on villains. No, they do. They really do. And I'm not. Yeah. And so, if that's their mentality out of the gate, just the stuff that we can see. Imagine the stuff we can't see. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm on board with that. And I know in a Star Trek society where we're all treating each other well and everything else, and in a perfect world, I would agree with you. That is not the world we live in. It just isn't. So.
Now, counterpoint, though, if China stopped launching rockets onto people and got rid of the Xichang Launch Center, where that is where it's all happening from, and moves everything to their coastal or sea platforms, would that change your opinion or change your mind?
They have a culture problem with regards to the way their government works. And I think that's fundamentally what needs to change first and foremost. Not saying that we don't have problems too, but they have, it's much, much, much deeper than that. But again, I don't have all of the thoughts in place or data necessary to have a compelling debate publicly on that right now. So I could get schooled pretty hard by, so I'll pin that one, but I think that would be an interesting show once I, build that up a little bit. But I think, yeah, I mean, I think that's it. I think those are the points I have at this point.
I do agree with you about, their government and, things that they're doing. And I feel the same way about Russia. And in the same way that I feel about Russia, I'm totally okay with their space program and would cooperate with Roscosmos in a heartbeat if given the chance. So it's a hard one.
I see. But
then again, Roscosmos is different. Yeah, China's space program is a lot more tied to their government and isn't its own shining beacon like Roscosmos is. So
the one I think we really need
still
to avoid,
different.
The space program we have to avoid is the British space program. We really can't.
We can't be like the British space program.
I was waiting for Ryan. You said what space program is that?
Yeah,
I was waiting for you to say that.
That's what I just said. I said, do they have to have one first?
All right. There were a couple other comments before.
I mean, we're pumping money into ESA, and NASA doesn't seem to want to work with ESA anymore. So, sorry, the White House doesn't want to work with ESA anymore.
Before we jump off this topic, I did want to go around the room because here we are. We're leaking on the space station again. It sounds like it may be. I'm speaking without authority, so do not take this as whatever. I'm basing this off of a comment in the chat room, but it sounds like it may be aluminium fatigue, which is not great, right? So I'm not sure how they're going to fix that up there. The space station is well past its prime. So the question becomes, and I'd like to ask all of the hosts this question: should we look to deorbit the space station before 2030? Like, figure out what we need to do to begin the deorbit process. And if we do that, do we want to actually fly a new space station through NASA, or are we okay with commercial space, Axiom and Vast, or whatever commercial company running their own space stations low Earth orbit, and has NASA do something else? Lunar space station, Martian space station, Aldrin cyclers, nuclear, I don't know. Take your pick. So, Jared, you're over here. I'll start with you.
Oh boy, where do I? Why should they deorbit?
Let's start with, should they deorbit earlier than 2030?
No, don't deorbit earlier than 2030. And a lot of this comes from my desire to actually see the parts of the International Space Station that are still good and usable, still used, because if they're good, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that I think we should have like modules, stuff for people to live in up there. But other things like truss structures, solar panels, and other, subsystems and things, if it can be kept on orbit, I would much more prefer it to be kept on orbit for someone else to be able to use it. It's almost like what happened with Mir, where Mir was almost fully corporately funded at the end of its life with Mir Corp, and then just that got, depending upon who you ask, it either didn't work or it got killed. So I'd love to see some sort of like private entity be handed some of the parts of the International Space Station that they can be handed. So I personally don't even want to see it deorbited in 2030 unless there is some absolutely massive technical showstopper that basically says, yes, all of this needs to stop now. So,
well, Jared, they have aluminum fatigue, it sounds like. So we're starting to enter that realm, I think, right?
Yes,
we may not be there yet, but it's starting, right?
It's sounding like a lot of the problems are coming from the Russian orbital segment. So we're not really hearing much about problems that are coming from the United States orbital segment.
Not true.
Not true.
Not true. No, the bathroom. So let's be clear. Once we have to shut off all the Russian sides, there won't be a bathroom anymore on the space station.
So allow me to please say the words that I actually am trying to say, Jamie, which is that the Russian orbital segment and the United States orbital segment are dependent upon each other, right? So they both provide services to each other that if you remove one from the other, then They're just not going to work. But that doesn't mean that you can't have a group come in and end up providing those services if need be. And right now we are in the infancy with those companies to provide that. Are they going to be able to do it in 5 years? I don't know. Probably not. But could they maybe within a couple of years after that? Possibly. I mean, we'll have to see where things. I mean, honestly, if you ask me this question in 6 months, it's probably going to be a completely different answer. But for now, no, I really don't think we should deorbit it even in 2030. So
someone make a note. In December, we need to ask this question again. Space Mike,
Yeah.
what do you think?
I mean, I'm with Jared where I also don't want to see it retired before 2030, but I do want us to be prepared for an emergency and be able to, get the astronauts off like we always should have been able to do in the case of an emergency, and be prepared to deorbit it ahead of schedule if need be. But I'm with Jared where I would like to at least see pieces of it still be used. The truss structure is still pretty good. We have brand new solar panels, brand new lithium ion batteries, and a whole bunch of experiments. And there's even one little extra port on one of the truss segments where we could start a whole new pressurized segment above where the current pressurized segment is. So even if we closed off the sections that are leaking and couldn't be inhabited anymore, we could still keep doing stuff there. And I would love to see some sort of reuse and salvage of any of the pieces that are still in good condition. However, it might be better at this point just to start from scratch. And seeing all these different problems with the micro cracking and with the leaks on the Russian side, the American bathroom never having worked. It worked for maybe a couple of months here and there over the past 20 years. I don't know if I've ever heard it being operational.
Just
You
have
know,
a permanent
honestly,
out
that
of
were-
order, do not use sign attached to it.
Who among us has not had a contractor issue with the plumbing in the building that they're in? So,
Right.
Right. Like what's a toilet amongst friends? So, right.
I think that we've learned a
So-
lot of lessons, though, and it would be better to start from scratch. And if it goes to commercial, I would be okay with it, but I would also fear that they wouldn't share much. Like, I could totally see at least one of them, at least starting off exclusively going after pharmaceutical stuff, and because it's proprietary, not because it's classified, but just because it's proprietary information for whatever pharmaceutical company they're working for, they don't share anything with us. We might get some updates, we might get some cool, neat stuff from the crew, but we're not going to get the type of reports that we normally get from NASA of, here's all this science that we did. And something that I've wanted to do for a long time, but I just haven't, is to follow up on, okay, cool, we got all of these results for these different experiments and different drugs, and now what? Now what's the application for this? And that's my bad. I haven't, fully delved into that, but
Do we know
that's my worry with commercial.
Do we know when the Viagra 1 space station is going to launch?
Never. It's Cialis has taken over as the sponsor.
Yeah, of course. Sorry. Of course. Showing
Come
my
on,
age.
it's it's the 2020s. Come on, get with the times.
Oh, the jokes that I want to make right now.
Ryan, one additional question for you, Ryan. Ryan, do we lose you to the top of the hour or a quarter after?
At the top.
At the top of the hour. Great. Then start answering. Go, Ryan.
What do you think?
See, I'm half and half, right? I think the ISS's time will have come by 2030, but on the other side, I really, really kind of resonate with what Pettit said in his post-landing conference, and he said, why not just keep bodging the ISS and keep flying it like the Air Force is doing with the B-52 bomber? Because the B-52, like he said, his point in that conference was, by the time it retires, the B-52 would have been an airworthy aircraft for about a century, right? And his perspective is, why can't we do something similar, maybe not for a century, but something similar with the International Space Station? And that resonates with me a little bit, so I'm kind of split on that. With commercial space stations, I'm actually pretty confident in that, because as we've seen with commercial cargo and commercial crew, with SpaceX at least, that works. That has been a resounding success in the ability to deliver cargo on Dragon and Cygnus, and the ability to deliver and return crew on Dragon. That doesn't concern me, and it also brings different perspectives to the game, because, for example, one of Vast's kind of policies is that they are going to be producing the same module design over and over and over again, which means if something happens to one module, they can swap it out like that, because they will already have all of the tooling, all of the production to build that exact same module. Maybe not, all the furniture that would have been built up inside of it, but the actual exterior composition, the actual structure of that module, they can manufacture that and swap it out like for like, and then all it requires is, redecorating inside, so to speak, right? So that's more of like a shift in mentality between building bespoke modules for the International Space Station, where every single module is different. Maybe they'll share some components, but that each module is pretty much a completely, unique design. With commercial space stations, they'll build one module, build 10 of them, and stick them all together and create a huge monolithic giant space station structure. I think that could be pretty successful. Obviously, it's a bit of a pain if, your middle module, you don't have to undock that module and then take that module out and then put that dock. The actual logistics of it might be a bit of a pain in the rear, but, in terms of being able to keep flying the space station and not have to, decommission the entire thing because one small module at the back is having a leak, that could be pretty successful, I think.
Pushing back against the B-52 argument for a moment, I think there's a big difference between the space station and, say, the B-52, in that the B-52 can be on the ground, go through checkouts, and then if it checks out and passes, you make it airworthy. The space station is operational and it has to be space-worthy 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You don't have an opportunity to bring it back to Earth, do some checkouts, send it back to space, right? So, go ahead, Jared.
I don't know if that's 100% accurate on that, because the B-52 is a bomber built primarily for use by the Strategic Air Command, which basically had B-52s operating 24/7, 365 for the 1950s until the 80s in that region? Or are we kind of talking about a different operational capacity?
They had a fleet, though. We don't have, ISS 1 is leaking, go to ISS 2.
Fair enough.
That's my point.
Okay.
That's my point. Is with the B-52s, like, you can take something out of service and be like, oh, no big deal. With the space station, there isn't a second space station. I can't take it. Yeah, Space Station 1.
Yeah.
Right. So I feel like it's different. I just feel like it's different. All right, Ryan.
Anyways, with that, I've got to run. So thank you so much. That was fun.
Thank you, Ryan.
Maybe we should rapid fire them every week, because that was fun.
All right. Thank you, Ryan.
Much appreciated. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Ryan. All right.
Oh, man.
Moving on to the next topic, I think, and removing Ryan from the scene here.
That was some.
Thank you. Yeah.
That was a very powerful wisdom there. So a 0 on its side is still a 0. So same thing my dad used to say to me when I would get on the floor and cry. All right.
Infinity minus 1 is still infinity.
Aside from Ryan being the one dispensing the questions, apparently you're the gatekeeper of space, Jared, since you're getting all the questions right so far.
I know a whole lot about very little. Today was literally just pure guesswork on my part. I just figured that Poland and Hungary were both in the Soviet Union tightly at that time. So I would imagine very early on it would have been very early on in Intercosmos when they would have flown, and Intercosmos started in the mid to late 70s there, and that's when it was either Salyut 5 or Salyut 6 was happening. So
yeah, I forget which one it was, but the first one, I forget if it was the Polish astronaut or the Hungarian one, flew in 1978, and then the other one in 1980. And then the first Indian astronaut was in 1984. So this is basically the return to flight for all of those nations.
Yeah.
We had one more, Charles Simoni, but he was technically a United States citizen. I don't know if he has dual citizenship, so I kind of almost don't count him, but he did technically do one of those space tourism trips with Space Adventures on a Soyuz to the International Space Station. But
yeah,
even so, that was in the 2000s. So
we didn't mention it to Ryan outright, but also the first Briton to go to space was a part of the Intercosmos program.
Never let him know of any positive British things ever. He will hold it
really?
over our
Yeah.
heads. No. Oh, so
No,
John,
no,
remember
no.
they can't hear you. So
No,
only we
don't
can
do
hear
that.
you, yeah.
We have someone in the background saying that they're going to ping Ryan and bring him back to argue about it, and it's okay. It's all right. Don't do it, everybody. Leave him be.
All right, shall we talk about? Shall I disappear as well?
If you want to, but
And I'm demolished.
Bye.
Well, we will see if this will work again. I'm going to try to attempt to share my screen. We will see if my audio goes out completely or not. Let's see. Let's try it this way first. All right. Testing. Can you hear me, chat? Can you hear me?
Chat, can you hear Mike? We are.
All right, cool.
You're good.
Well, we are looking at the Space Launch Complex 37 and the demolition of the Delta Heavy launch building to make way for SpaceX and Starship facilities there. Well, at least we think so. There's still a little bit of stuff that they're waiting for approval, but everything is looking very likely that they're going to do a Starship tower there. So yeah, what a full circle from way back in the day, back in the early Falcon days, before the Falcon 9 had even launched for the first time, where United Launch Alliance employees were on the fence making fun of the SpaceX employees who were working out of intent to put together just first the demo, but just all the Falcon 9 stuff for the first time. And now their precious building is being demolished to make way for Starship. And yeah, what an end of an era. Wow. Obviously, Jared here is pretty depressed about that.
Yeah.
Delta already retired, though. We're not going to see any more.
I know, and it still makes me sad that Delta 2 doesn't fly to this day. I'm still glad we all got to go out and see the last Delta 2. That was I'll remember that forever. And saying in the space pod that it's the best rocket that's ever flown. What was that? The space pod I did literally 10 years ago.
Almost, yeah.
And I think I said
top 5, top 10.
Yeah, and I think I said in that space pod that if Falcon 9 was able to get reusable, then it would become, then Falcon 9 would supersede Delta 2, which I would now agree. Yes, Falcon 9 is the greatest rocket of all time.
Jamie's got the
but
popcorn.
Yeah, Jamie's just eating some popcorn over there. Yeah, no, good call, Jamie. But yeah, I'm sad to see it go. I just loved the Delta 4 series rockets. They were just really cool. Were they absurd because they were using hydrolocks? Absolutely. Was it dumb? Absolutely. Was the RS-68 a cool engine? Sure, it was. Did the rocket need to light itself on fire? Yes, because that's how you pre-start a hydrolocks engine.
Of course, it needed to set itself on fire.
Yeah, who doesn't set themselves on fire when they're getting ready to start whatever work they're supposed to be doing?
That's how you know it's working.
What's your excuse? So yeah, but also the future is now, old man. Here comes Starship as soon as the kinks get worked out, which I'm confident that they will get worked out with things like version 3 coming up. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see that. And also I'm wondering too about Slick 6 here out at Vandenberg. We don't really hear much about Slick 6, which was also a United Launch Alliance launch pad that's now in, I don't want to say in SpaceX's possession because they're leasing it there. But next time I am, thanks, Jamie. Actually, sometime in the next couple of months, I'll be taking a train up that direction. So I'll try and take some really good photos if I can,
nice.
as it goes past. So, yeah, but goodbye, old friend. So,
yeah, it's weird to see this end of an era, and we only still have a handful left of Atlas V, and then ULA moving all over to the different configurations of Vulcan with a different number of solid rocket boosters. And I didn't want to play the clip because it's from a different channel that we're unfamiliar with. But Tori Bruno was basically saying recently this week that he still doesn't think going reusable makes sense, at least not for ULA financial
Come on,
sense. And it's
Tori.
just like, dude, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Do you
Watch.
have any thoughts about that?
I mean, we're
No?
not talking about SpaceX, so I can jump back in. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Look, I'm a huge fan of Tori Bruno. I think he's great. I think he's very passionate about space. But like, what? No, no. Clearly, the future is reusability. It's been proven. It's been proven.
Yeah, that's definitely corporate speak. That's
Yeah.
definitely
100%.
the people. That's definitely the people on high saying, Tory, you know, don't you dare say that. Don't you dare say the R word in front of everybody.
And stop talking about reusing the engines. We're not going to do it. We're not going to pay for it.
Smart was not smart to begin with.
No, smart reusability was dumb. Like,
I think there was. I don't want to. Oh God, I don't want to call it engineering hubris involved in that. But it just felt like it was this idea of like, we'll do reusability, but we're not going to do it the way those guys are because we're not those guys.
No,
we're
it was totally
different.
Jared,
it's
it's
just like
100% engineering hubris. That is absolutely what
I
it
know.
was.
And I hate
But
that
you weren't
we
going to
have
say it.
call
I'll
that.
say it.
Yeah, so go ahead. That's fine, because it is. But man, just like physics dictates that just return the damn booster by itself altogether. That's the best way to do it. That's what physics says. Who cares? It's not copying. It's physics. It's physics. What more do I need to say? Other than, like, that's why at least I personally didn't get mad when Blue Origin was showing how they're doing stuff or how China's showing how they're doing their stuff. Are they copying it? Yes. Why would they copy it? Physics. That's right. It all works the same. So
I feel like we need a whole series of T-shirts. Physics dictates, and different thing for each one. Physics dictates that you need flaps. Physics dictates that your rocket is trash.
You just like
physics dictates your rocket is trash.
We'll have I'll even submit one of my Kerbal rockets as the one that's garbage.
Oh my god!
With a disappointed Dada in the background looking down on it.
Your grid fins, whack. Your landing legs, whack. Your throttle response on your engines, whack.
An entire physics dictates your rocket is trash or your thing is trash line. It'll just like different engines, different rockets. Oh yeah, 100%. We'll put some
Chad, have you got any good ideas?
Just to piss people off.
Oh my gosh. Physics dictates that you're using kerosene wrong.
Whack.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my god. Yep.
Sorry, didn't mean to derail you there, Jared.
No, it's okay. You're good.
How strange, though. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, Rocket Lab being our favorite rocket company not Rocket Lab, United Launch Alliance being our favorite rocket company to now being the butt of our jokes.
Oh, no. My favorite of all time was it Rocketdyne? I don't remember, but someone took out like a full page ad. This is like probably 15 years ago.
Oh, God, I remember this.
Yeah, it was a picture. It was split in half, and like half the picture was a rocket lifting off, and the other half was a microphone. And they're like, "Well, some people talk about going to space. We actually do." And like that was like the last thing they ever did. And then SpaceX just ate their lunch. Yeah, and like they didn't call out anyone in particular. They weren't like, "Oh, we're talking about," but you knew what they were saying. And like, yeah, I think it was Rocketdyne, wasn't it? Anyone have that ad?
Yeah.
I'm gonna see if I can find it.
I feel like it was in the early Pratt and Whitney Rocketdyne era.
And now they're owned by L3 Harris, right? It's so sad. Actually, something else that's kind of sad but mildly interesting for anyone who's been around for a long time. Does anyone remember the J2X? that they were developing in the Constellation program.
Yes.
They developed it. They finished it. They did a bunch of test firings. It was a freaking amazing engine. It was even better than the original J2. It was awesome. And then Constellation got canceled, and they canceled that engine as well and didn't decide to use that for the exploration upper stage. They decided to do their weird configuration of a bunch of Centaur engines, which you'd think would be easy, but apparently it's not.
Gosh. Jami, you found it?
There it is.
Beautiful.
There it is. Let me see if I can read it for you because it's really, really tough. Oh, here it is. It says, on the left side with that microphone in an auditorium, it says, others' idea of making noise. And then on the right side, you can see kind of like a ULA-ish rocket. It's not a real rocket. And then it just says, ours. And it's Pratt & Whitney and United Technologies. And then the text says, while the other guys launch powerful press conferences, we power launches of people and critical payloads.
I mean,
man.
they were...
aged like milk.
I mean, the ad is correct for like 2 years after it. And then it just goes completely backwards.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So they made a good point for like 24 months there.
Oh,
which
yay them.
24 months in aerospace is an eternity.
So just as to kind of wrap up my thought there, that J2X engine, all the hardware for it got auctioned off, and the highest bidder just so happens to be L3 Harris. So they now own all of the hardware, all of the IP, all of the everything for the J2X, and are apparently allowed to do whatever they want with it. Will they? Probably not, unless somebody pays them to. But in case you ever wanted to know whatever happened to the J2X, that's what's happened to it.
So wasn't the J2X designed by NASA?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So does that? Here's where I'm confused. Doesn't that mean that everyone here on this panel, in a way, paid for the design of that engine?
Yep. And NASA auctioned it off.
How can they do that?
Canceled hardware. I guess if it doesn't have a purpose, they're allowed to do that. It'd take me a bit of digging, but to find the actual where the permission is. But apparently they can.
Well, y'all want to go start a space program at some point in the next like 5 years? I got like $20.
$20.
YOLO, let's go. I don't know. I feel like I feel like a lot of people are generating, like, they see the success of certain space programs, like, oh, I'm going to go build a rocket too. We have more than enough rockets, but what we're missing are lunar landers. We're missing lunar rovers and Martian rovers. We're missing lunar habitat.
Capsules.
You're right. All of it. Someone needs to make an Aldrin cycler, right? Like, at the end of the day, why am I yeeting the entire vehicle from Earth all the way to the final destination? Why don't I just do NASA's original plan where you go up to a space station and you got cyclers between space stations designed for the long journey, specifically designed for the long journey, right? Huge, spacious, not designed for gravity at all, right? Like, there are a ton of things that people can do because I think we're about to see, you need to start unlocking Earth to somewhere around Leo or Earth Moon, something like that. And once we unlock massive amounts of payload there, a $1 trillion industry opens up, right? Like,
easy.
Everything. That's what unlocks everything, I think. It's going to be insane. Absolutely insane.
Cislunar space is the critical key. Once you get into there and you start getting into the resource development of that area, man, you got it. Like, whoever controls that gets the money. So
I feel like the moon is a better launching place than Earth because of the much lower gravity. So it feels like the pathway is, when you want to go to Mars, you actually go to the moon first. You go to, the Hilton Hotel on the moon. You hang out there for a few days, and then you jump on your Martian transport that goes from the moon to Mars, and it probably there'd probably be a space station around Mars. And then you'd have landers that go from Mars down to the planet, then back up to the station, right? And then you just have these massively huge vehicles that go between the two. Well, maybe not the moon. Maybe it would be a space station around Earth. I don't know. Anyhow, someone needs to start building that stuff.
even one of the Lagrange points or something like that. I mean, it'd be a lot easier from one of the Lagrange points to even Earth Moon Lagrange points. That's what I'm talking about. To be able to do different missions to Mars and not be so constrained with the launch window. You'd have a little bit more freedom. You'd still have the similar launch windows, but you'd have a little bit more freedom and leeway to go back and forth.
No, that's not it.
Not sure what you're looking for
I can't find my copy of the High Frontier that I have, which is basically like I think.
I mean, that's kind of what we're
we
talking
know
about
you
here.
have it.
So,
you've gotten all of the space poll questions right. We know that you have it.
It's somewhere around here. So
yeah, and everyone's like calling me out of like, yeah, other people suggested this years ago. Which Jared, you're also calling me out on this. And like, I'm not saying these are my ideas. I'm saying these are the things people should be working on right now, right? Like,
building. Yes,
exactly.
We don't need more super heavy lift rockets. What we need are the Aldrin cyclers. We need the HABs on the moon. We need we need power, right? Like we need nuclear-based power or something that we can get to the moon and Mars to just sit there and run constantly so we can power these things. Doesn't have to be nuclear, it can be something else, but like it's got to sit there and just run constantly. We need all of this technology figured out. And like it feels like all these companies are like, I'm going to build a rocket. I'm like, why more rockets? We don't need more rockets. Anyhow, but in all fairness, we're a little bit ahead of industry right now, right? We cannot send the amount of payload necessary right now today. We're about to unlock that. So I feel like if you start your company today do these things, by the time you're ready to go, I think the industry will be ready to send massive payloads up. But like it is a little bit scary because like we don't know like when New Glenn will be fully operational or any of the I have to be careful when any of the other ones will be, right? But like I do believe New Glenn will become fully operational.
And I mean, your point about cislunar space and the $1 trillion industry, I mean, it makes sense to me. That's why Blue Origin is focusing so much on that goal. And let SpaceX worry about Mars. We're going to worry about this stuff that's a lot closer, a lot easily accessible, and could open up this huge industry for us. I mean, even ULA, to kind of tie this back to them, I wish that they were still doing ACES in its original form. They kind of sort of are with their Centaur 5 upgraded Centaur, but that'll have different evolutions and upgrades to eventually get to where ACES would have been if they had pursued that. But it's still, a step in the right direction, regardless of whatever happens with United Launch Alliance. If they can do those and they can refuel them and be able to have a lower amount of boil off for their cryogenic fuels, then they'll be able to do a lot. At least start doing Aldrin cycler type stuff for at least robotic payloads and logistical type of stuff. Maybe not sending people yet, but getting that industry going and getting it moving. So I still am encouraged and hopeful that they'll be able to achieve some of those goals. Otherwise, United Launch Alliance's days are definitely numbered. I feel like that clock, that timer has already started.
I feel like their days are numbered. Like if they're saying that they're not going to do reusability, then they have one customer in mind, right? And then their whole thing is like, oh well, we want the extra performance for payload. It's like, well, but your performance is how you design your rocket, right? Like you could you build a bigger rocket to get the reusability, right? It's a slider.
Or you do things like propellant densification and other things like that.
Absolutely, there are ways to figure this stuff out, and ULA will do smart cyclers. That's where the cycler goes there, and then they bring back the avionics bay, but they throw the rest of the cycler away, and then they put the avionics into a new cycler that they build, and it goes there, and they capture the avionics with
a
little robot.
That sounds.
Is that what they're already doing for the secret space program? Is that why they're not worried about their business? Whatever the black budget is?
I am really, really sad about United Launch Alliance because I really love a lot. Like Tori Bruno is super passionate about. He's so good. He's just a good person, and he's passionate and he's smart. And I don't understand why he's so adamant on this stuff. It's like, okay, goodbye, I guess.
Yeah.
All right.
I just personally, I don't think he's privately that way. I would imagine. So
I don't know.
Like, but again, these are all this speculation on my part entirely on that. So,
Shall we wrap it up and send this thing into post show?
yeah,
Yeah.
let's do it.
All right.
Well, thank you everybody for being here, and want to give a huge shout out and thank you to everyone who's been supporting us through the YouTube membership program. You can join for as little as $1 a month, and that gets you access to exclusive content and helps us to make more videos and do all sorts of stuff here on the channel. So thank you very much to everyone who is supporting us and allowing us to continue in our current form. And please consider signing up for that. And right after this, we will have our After Dark, where we're going to continue to talk about all sorts of things that have been interesting us over the past week. And sometimes it's not space related as well. So you might be surprised at the type of conversations that you hear in that After Dark. So again, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for putting up with our awkwardness and technical difficulties after so long of being on the air.
Wait,
it's part of the charm.
I want to know. I'm really curious. Hang on, let's find Mike's screen. I want to do one more test. Do you have anything?
Oh, yeah. Here, I'll just share.
Yeah.
We're
gonna leave this in the show. This is great. You get to watch us do this live. All right, cool. So now if I do this, can you all still hear us? Like you should
Testing.
be. I think the problem was someone added space. Yeah,
Testing.
but John, again, you're not in the scene, so they can't hear you, and you can always hear us whether we're in the scene or not, unless you're listening on YouTube. Okay, cool. So, cool. So I think the problem was in the scene, Space Mike, you were at in that
layers
scene.
for that?
There's the dynamic grid, which puts everyone's audio in there. So anyone who's in the dynamic grid, they get their audio, and then you were added as a speaker again, and then that speaker object was muted. So because you were in there as muted, it was muting your audio, and that layer was on top of the dynamic grid layer. And so the first thing it did was mute your microphone, and then it put up the screen, and then it brought in everyone else's microphones.
Got it.
So what I did to fix it was I removed your object from in there because it's not necessary. All we need is the dynamic grid. And I think that these are better screen shares because you can see more stuff. It's easier to like figure out, and then it doesn't create that weird like back and forth thing. So there you go, everyone. You got to watch us troubleshoot in intro, and you got to watch us troubleshoot audio on the way back out. All right. Thanks, everyone. So for watching. Wait, can I do this? Wait, this is on loop too. I don't understand. We're going to hit the button. Here we go.